When a dog gives birth at a small-town clinic, the vet expects just another routine delivery, but what she finds leaves her speechless, something so unexpected it changes everything. As the days unfold, this tiny miracle becomes the heart of a story. Filled with love, resilience, and second chances, what did the vet see that she couldn't believe, and how will this one moment impact everyone's lives forever? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today, and if you like this story, don't forget to subscribe. Christopher's boots wore a path in the clinic's folium floor back and forth he paced, each minute stretching longer than the last. The clock on the wall ticked past midnight, its hands crawling forward while Luna's whimpers echoed from behind closed doors. She'll pull through, he muttered the words to himself, his weathered hands clenching and unclenching. The examination room door creaked open. Dr. Jennifer's face appeared, her surgical mask pulled down. "Christopher, you can come in now." He rushed inside to find Luna sprawled on her side, 4 tiny bundles of golden fur nestled against her belly. His chest swelled with pride at the sight of his beloved dog with her new family. Dr. Jennifer's sharp intake of breath drew his attention. She cradled the smallest pup in her hands, its tiny body barely larger than her palm. This one, her voice trailed off as she worked, her movements precise but urgent. The puppy's legs looked wrong, too small, too weak. A perfect heart-shaped patch marked its chest. Christopher's throat tea frightened Doc. The puppy lay still, its breathing shallow. Dr. Jennifer administered oxygen, her fingers gentle but firm as she massaged its chest. Seconds stretched into minutes until finally the tiny creature drew a strong breath. Relief flooded the room. 4 healthy puppies, Dr. Jennifer said, wiping her brow. But this little one, she explained the puppy's condition, the underdeveloped legs, the concerning heart rate. Christopher approached the smallest pup, now tucked against Luna's warm body. Despite its size, despite its struggles, it fought to live. His callous fingers stroked its soft fur. "Hope," he whispered. "That's your name, little one." Luna nuzzled her smallest pup closer, her eyes heavy with exhaustion but bright with maternal pride. Christopher stayed until each puppy nursed his worry for Hope, mixing with gratitude for their survival. The drive home was quiet, his thoughts full of the tiny fighter with the heart-shaped mark in the barn. He made sure Luna and her pups were comfortable before heading to his empty farmhouse, bone tired and ready to get into bed but unable to shake the image of Hope's first determined breath. The morning sun streamed through the barn windows as Christopher made his way to Luna's pen. His boots crunched on the fresh hay he'd laid down the night before. Luna's tail wagged at his approach, her gentle eyes following his movements as he knelt beside her. 3 of the puppies squirmed and wiggled, already showing signs of strength as they pushed against each other to nurse. But Hope lay still, her tiny body trembling with effort as she tried to reach her mother's milk. Sid Scher's heart clenched at the sight. Luna whined softly, using her nose to nudge Hope closer to her belly. The little pup's legs, weak and underdeveloped, barely moved beneath her. "That's a girl," Christopher murmured, watching Luna's maternal instincts at work. "Take care of your little one." Over the next few days, Christopher found himself spending more and more time in the barn. He fashioned a small platform from an old wooden box, padding it with soft blankets to help Hope reach Luna more easily. Every few hours he checked her temperature and breathing, his worry growing when she struggled to keep up with her siblings. "Come on, Hope," he encouraged, his voice soft in the quiet barn as he helped position her for feeding. Just a little more. His calloused hands, usually so firm on tractor wheels and fence posts, became gentle instruments of care as he tended to the fragile puppy. The other puppies tumbled and played, their strength growing daily, but it was Hope who captured Christopher's heart. Each small victory is stronger. Suckle, a tiny wiggle forward, brought a smile to his weathered face. He found himself talking to her throughout the day, sharing stories as he worked around the farm. That evening, after finishing his chores, Christopher settled into the old rock chair on his porch. Hope lay cradled in his hands, her tiny body warm against his chest. Above them, stars dotted the clear country sky, twinkling like his wife Marie's favorite diamond earrings. "You remind me of her, you know," he whispered to Hope, his voice rough with emotion. She never gave up either. Right until the end, the memory of Marie's fierce determination during her illness washed Over him, Hope's small heart beat steadily against his palm, echoing the rhythm of his own heart, filled with both sadness and possibility as the evening chill settled. Around them, Christopher gazed at the stars, holding Hope close to the familiar. Ache of loss mingled with a new feeling of warmth he hadn't expected to find in such a tiny, struggling creature. With a heavy sigh, he stood and carried Hope back to Luna, his mind full of memories and his heart carrying a mixture of sorrow and hope. As he prepared for bed, a general knock at the door the next day pulled Christopher from his morning coffee. Through the window, he spotted Dr. Jennifer's familiar figure on his porch, holding what looked like a shoe box-size container, his eyebrows raised in surprise. He hadn't expected any visitors today. Dr. Jennifer. He opened the door, the spring breeze rustling his gray hair. Is everything all right? She smiled warmly. Everything's fine, Mr. What I hope I'm not interrupting anything. No, please come in. Christopher stepped aside, gesturing toward his mod's kitchen. The morning sun streamed through the checkered curtains, casting a warm glow on the worn wooden table. Dr. Jennifer placed the box carefully on the table. I brought something for Hope, she said, her eyes twinkling with excitement. She lifted the lid, revealing what looked like a tiny contraption made of lightweight metal and cloth. What is that? Christopher leaned closer, puzzled. It's a custom wheelchair, she explained, lifting it out. Gia and I have been working on it after hours. We took measurements during Hope's last checkup. She demonstrated how the small harness worked, showing how Hope's back legs would rest in the supported sling while her front legs could move freely. Two small wheels were attached to either side. Christopher's throat tightened as he touched the carefully crafted device. You made this for Hope. We couldn't stop thinking about her spirit, Dr. Jennifer said softly. She deserves a chance to move around like her siblings. It'll take time and patience for her to learn, but I think she can do it. Christopher had to clear his throat before speaking. I don't know what to say. Thank you. After Dr. Jennifer left, Christopher carried the wheelchair to Luna's pen. Luna's ears perked up, watching intently as he approached Hope with gentle hands. He fitted the harness around Hope's tiny body, making sure it wasn't too tight. The puppy squirmed at first and used to the strange sensation. Her legs kicked weakly against the support straps as Christopher set her down on the hay-covered floor. Luna inched closer, sniffing the wheelchair carefully before giving Hope an encouraging lick. Hope tried to move forward, her front paws scratching at the ground while the wheels stayed stubbornly in place. She whimpered in frustration, but kept trying, her determination evident in every attempt. Christopher knelt beside her, his weathered hands hovering nearby, ready to help, but letting her figure it out on her own. That's it, girl, he murmured, watching her struggle with the new device. Take your time. Something stirred in his chest as he watched her, a familiar feeling of wanting to fight against the odds. Later that night, as Christopher prepared for bed, he made a silent promise he would help Hope learn to use her wheels, no matter how many attempts it took, no matter how many days or weeks needed. Her fighting spirit deserved nothing less. Christopher woke with the first rays of dawn, but the heaviness in his chest had nothing to do with the early hour. The calendar on his bedside table showed today's date, April 15th, Tucker's anniversary. His throat tightened as memories of his son-in-law flooded back, along with the crushing weight of regret. He went through his morning routine, mechanically feeding Luna and the puppy, eyes checking on Hope in her wheelchair, but his mind kept drifting to Ashley, his only daughter, and how his stubborn pride had driven her away. He'd been so certain Tucker wasn't good enough for her, so convinced he knew best. Now, years later, all he had to show for it was an empty house and a grandson he barely knew. By midday, the guilt had become unbearable. Christopher sat at his kitchen table, staring at his phone, Tucker words echoing in his mind. Life's too short to hold on to anger, sir. Those words felt prophetic now. His hands trembled as he scrolled to Ashley's number. He tried calling before, but she rarely answered. Each ring felt like an eternity until Dad. Ashley's voice was hesitant, guarded. Christopher's breath caught Ashley high. He paused, struggling to find the right words. I've been thinking about you today. I know what day it is, she said softly. I miss him too, Christopher admitted, surprising himself with his honesty. And I miss you, sweetheart, both of you. The silence that followed felt endless. Then Ashley spoke again, her voice less distant. How are you doing? Christopher told her about Luna and her puppies, his voice warming as he described Hope's determination with her. Wheelchair, he could hear Ashley smile. When she responded, Jimmy loves dogs, she said. Hen's been begging for one. She hesitated. Would it be okay if we came to visit to see the puppies? Christopher gripped the phone tighter, his heart racing. Yes, he said quickly, perhaps too quickly. Yes, of course, anytime. You're always welcome here. They settled on the following weekend, and after hanging up, Christopher sat in stunned silence for several minutes. Then he sprang into action, surveying his farmhouse with new eyes. The place needed work, lots of it. He spent the evening cleaning, dusting shelves that hadn't been touched in months, changing sheets in the guest room, and clearing away the clutter that had accumulated over years of solitary living. He even dug out some of Ashley's old childhood books from the attic, hoping Jimmy might enjoy them. As Christopher finally crawled into bed that night, exhausted but unable to stop smiling, his mind raced with both excitement and nervousness about the upcoming reunion. For the first time in years, the farmhouse felt like it was waiting for something or someone. The morning sun cast long shadows across the farmhouse as Christopher made one final sweep through the living room. His hands trembled slightly as he straightened the already straight cushions on the couch. The sound of tires crunching on gravel made his heart skip a beat. Through the window, he watched a blue sedan pull into the driveway. Christopher stepped onto the porch, his feet feeling heavy as lead. Ashley emerged from the driver's side, looking so much like her mother it made his chest ache. From the passenger side came a small boy with sandy brown hair. Jamie, hi Dad, Ashley said softly, standing at the bottom of the porch steps. Her voice carried the weight of years of unspoken words. Ashley. Christopher cleared his throat. You look wonderful. Jimmy pressed closer to his mother's side, one hand clutching her jacket. Ashley placed a gem hand on his shoulder. Jamie, this is your grandfather. Christopher knelt down, ignoring the protest in his knees. Hello there, Jamie. I've been looking forward to meeting you properly. Jamie peeked out from behind Ashley, offering a tiny wave, but no words. Would you both like to come in? I've got breakfast ready, pancakes and eggs. Nothing fancy, but they're warm inside. They settled around the kitchen table. The silence felt thick enough to cut with a knife as they passed syrup and butter back and forth. Christopher watched Jimmy push his eggs around his plate, reminded so much of Ashley at that age. The pancakes are good, Ashley offered, breaking the tension. You always did make them well. Your mother's recipe, Christopher said softly. Never could get them quite as perfect as she did, though. Jimmy looked up at this mention of his grandmother, curiosity flickering across his face. Jimmy, Christopher said, seizing the moment, would you like to meet Luna and her puppies? They're in the barn for the first time that morning. Jim's face lit up. Puppies? He asked, his voice small but eager. Christopher led them to the barn where Luna lay in her bed of fresh straw, her puppies squirming around her. Jim's eyes went wide at the sight, and a smile spread across his face. This here is Luna, Christopher said, kneeling beside the mother dog, and these are her babies. Jim crept closer, careful and quiet. His eyes fell on Hope, who was attempting to scoot closer to her siblings in her tiny wheelchair. What's wrong with that one? Jimmy asked, his voice full of concern rather than judgment. That's Hope, Christopher explained. She was born with some troubles with her legs, but she's the bravest puppy I've ever known. Jim reached out slowly, letting Hope sniff his hand before gently stroking her fur. Hope responded with a tiny lick to his fingers, making the boy giggle. Ashley watched from the barn doorway, tears gathering in her eyes as she observed her son's gentle interaction with the puppy and her father's patient guidance. That night, as they all settled into their bed, Ashley and Jimmy in the guest room, Christopher in his familiar spot. The farmhouse felt warmer somehow, filled with a sense of possibility none of them had dared to hope for in years. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Jimmy crept down the creaky farmhouse stairs. He found Christopher already in the kitchen sipping coffee at the table. Can we go see the puppies? Jimmy whispered, bouncing on his toes. Christopher smiled, sitting down his mug. Of course, but first let me teach you the proper way to handle them in the barn. Christopher demonstrated how to support a puppy's body. Always be extra gentle, he explained, carefully lifting one of the stronger puppies. See how I'm holding him? Make sure to support their bottom and chest. Jimmy nodded seriously, his eyes wide with concentration when Christopher Set the puppy down. Jimmy gravitated toward Hope. She lay in her special corner, watching her siblings tumble around. Can I help her with her wheelchair? Jamie asked. Sure, can just. Remember, she's still learning. Christopher showed Jimmy how to position Hope's tiny legs into supports. Hope wiggled, trying to move forward, and Jimmy crawled alongside her, offering gentle encouragement. That's it, Hope, you can do it. Jimmy cheered as the puppy managed a wobbly step back in the farmhouse. Ashley stood at the kitchen window watching her son with Hope. She wrapped her hands around a warm coffee mug. Turning when Christopher entered, he's got a natural way with animals, Christopher said, joining her at the counter. Ashley nodded, her throat tight, just like Tucker did. She paused, taking a shaky breath. It's been so hard since we lost him. Sometimes I look at Jimmy and see his father smile, and it just Christopher's weathered hand covered hers. I'm sorry, Ashley, for everything I was wrong about Tucker, and I was wrong to let my pride keep me away all these years. Dad, Ashley's voice cracked, I miss so much of Jim's life, of your life. I want to make it right if you'll let me. Ashley wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I'd like that. As evening approached, they gathered on the front porch. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks while Jimmy played with Hope in the yard. Luna watched from nearby as her smallest pup attempted to follow Jimmy across the grass. Look, Mom, Grandpa, she's doing it, Jamie called out as Hope managed several steps in her wheelchair. Christopher and Ashley shared a smile as Jamie's laughter rang out across the yard. Pure and joyful, Hope yipped excitedly, her tail wagging as she made progress, one determined step at a time. The morning dew still clung to the grass. The next day, when Christopher, Ashley, and Jimmy brought Hope outside, Luna followed close behind her, protective gaze never leaving her smallest pup. The sun cast long shadows across the farmyard as they set Hope down in her tiny wheelchair. Come on, Hope, Jimmy called, softly kneeling a few feet away from her. You can do it. Hope tilted her head, looking uncertain about the contraption supporting her small body. Her legs trembled slightly as she tried to move forward. That's it, nice and easy, Christopher encouraged, kneeling beside Jimmy. Ashley watched from nearby, her heart warming at the sight of her son and father working together. Hope wobbled, then took one tentative step forward, the wheels of her chair turning slowly. She did it. Jimmy clapped, his face lighting up with pure joy. Throughout the morning and into the afternoon, they worked patiently with Hope. Each attempt brought small victories. 3 steps here, 4 steps there. Jimmy never left her side, offering gentle words of encouragement and tiny treats. Christopher had approved. Look how far she went this time, Jimmy exclaimed after Hope managed to wheel herself almost all the way across the yard, his chest puffed with pride as he walked alongside her, ready to help if needed. Christopher noticed the change in his grandson, the way Jamie's shoulders straightened, how his voice grew stronger with each success. The boy, who had arrived shy and uncertain, now moved with purpose, completely focused on helping his 4-legged friend. She's just like you, Jamie, Christopher said, ruffling his grandson's hair, never giving up, always trying harder. As evening approached and the sky turned purple with sunset, Christopher led a tired but happy Jamie up to the guest room. The boy crawled into bed, still talking about Hope's progress. Can we help her practice more tomorrow? Jimmy asked through a yawn. Of course we can, Christopher promised, pulling the blanket up to Jamie's chin. She's lucky to have such a good trainer. After saying good night, Christopher walked to his own room, his heart fuller than it had been in years. The sound of Jamie's gentle breathing from the guest room and Ashley's soft footsteps downstairs filled the old farmhouse with a warmth he'd almost forgotten could exist. The days flowed together like honey on the farm, sweet and unhurried. Ashley found herself falling into an easy routine with her father, their movements around the farmhouse becoming a coordinated dance. In the morning, she'd help prepare breakfast while Christopher tended to the animals. And in the afternoons, they'd work side by side, feeding chickens and checking fences. One warm afternoon, as they sorted through feed bags in the barn, Ashley paused, her hands resting on a burlap sack. You know, Dad, she said softly, I used to be so angry with you about Tucker. Christopher stopped what he was doing, his weathered hands going still. The barn was quiet except for the distant sound of chickens clucking. I couldn't understand how you could disapprove of someone who made me so happy. Ashley continued, her voice catching slightly, but seeing you would. Jamie, these past few days, watching how you care for Hope, she wiped a tear from her cheek. It's helped me understand you better. Christopher's eyes grew misty-eyed. Was wrong about Tucker, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. I was so focused on what I thought was best for you that I couldn't see what actually was. He moved closer to Ashley, reaching for her hand. I promise you from now on I'll be here for you and Jamie, whatever you need. Ashley squeezed his hand, years of hurt beginning to fade like old photographs in the sun. That evening, after a hearty dinner of pot roast and potatoes, they gathered in the living room. The fireplace crackled warmly, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Jamie sat cross-legged on the floor, Hope positioned in her wheelchair before him. Watch this, Jimmy called excitedly. Hope's gotten so good. Christopher and Ashley settled into their chairs, watching as Jamie encouraged Hope forward. The little puppy, her determination evident in every movement, began to wheel herself across the room. Her progress was steady and sure, nothing like the hesitant steps of just days before. Look at her go, Ashley laughed as Hope made her way confidently from one end of the room to the other. Her Christopher's deep chuckle joined her laughter, and Jimmy beamed with pride. The sound of their shared joy filled the room, wrapping around them like a warm blanket. It felt like old times before the arguments and hurt feelings, when they were simply a family who loved each other. Luna, watching from her bed in the corner, wagged her tail contentedly as Hope wheeled back to Jimmy for a well-deserved treat. The firelight caught the heart-shaped patch on Hope's chest, making it seem to glow with warmth. The next day, the morning sun painted golden streaks across the farmhouse kitchen as Christopher, Ashley, and Jamie settled into their new routine. A week had passed since their arrival, and the awkwardness that had initially filled the air had melted away like morning frost. Christopher watched with pride as Jimmy carefully measured out feed for the chickens, his small tongue poking out in concentration. That's right, buddy, just like that, he encouraged, noting how naturally his grandson took to farm life inside the house. Ashley hummed while folding laundry, pausing occasionally to watch Hope wheeling confidently past her. The little puppy had mastered her wheelchair, navigating around furniture with surprising grace. Luna followed close behind, her maternal instinct still strong even as Hope gained independence. After lunch, Christopher adjusted his worn baseball cap and turned to Jimmy. Want to see how the farm really works? He asked, his eyes twinkling. Jamie's face lit up like a Christmas tree. Can I really? He bounced on his toes, barely containing his excitement. Out in the fields, Christopher lifted Jamie onto the tractor, keeping a steady hand on his back as he explained how the machine worked. Jamie's eyes grew wide as Christopher pointed out the different crops and explained the irrigation system. Grandpa, Jamie said, studying the neat rows of corn. Could I help maybe with something small? Christopher's heart swelled at the request. Well, he pretended to think it over. I suppose we could use an assistant water checker. Would you like that job? Jamie nodded enthusiastically, his chest puffing out with importance as Christopher showed him how to check if the soil was properly watered. That evening, Christopher helped Jamie into bed, smiling as the boy snuggled under his quilt. Hope lay curled up nearby in her special bed, already dozing. Grandpa, did you see how I checked all the water levels? Jamie's words tumbled out in excited bursts. And remember when I spotted that dry patch near the fence? That was important. Right, very important, Christopher agreed, tucking the blanket around Jamie's shoulders. You've got good eyes, just like your dad did. Jamie beamed at the comparison, then launched into another story about his day. Christopher sat on the edge of the bed, listening intently to every word. His grandson's enthusiasm filled him with a warmth he hadn't felt in yet years, giving him a sense of purpose he thought he'd lost as Jamie's stories began to slow, his eyes growing heavy. Christopher felt overwhelmed with gratitude, having Jamie here teaching him about the farm. Watching him grow was a gift he never expected to receive. The next morning dawned gray and chilly. Christopher noticed something was wrong the moment he checked on Luna and her puppies. While the other puppies bounced around playfully, Hope lay still in her bed, her breathing shallow and labored. Hope, Christopher's voice trembled as he gently touched her small body. Her usual spark was missing, replaced by a worrying lethargy. His heart racing, he carefully picked her up, cradling her against his chest. Ashley appeared in the doorway, Jamie close behind her. Dad, what's wrong? I need to take Hope to Dr. Jennifer, Christopher said, trying to keep his voice steady. Something's not right, Jim's lower lip quivered. Is Hope going to be okay? Ashley pulled Jamie closer. Grandpa's going to make sure she gets help, sweetheart. She met Christopher's worried gaze. Will stay here and take care of everything. Just go. The drive to the clinic felt endless. Christopher kept glancing at Hope, who lay quietly in a blanket-lined box on the passenger seat, hanging there little. One, he whispered. Dr. Jennifer was waiting when they arrived, having responded immediately to his urgent call. She examined Hope thoroughly, her expression growing more serious with each passing moment. Christopher, she said finally, Hope's heart condition is worse and her heart isn't growing strong enough to keep up with her body. She stroked Hope's gently. Even with the progress she's made with the wheelchair, her heart is struggling to handle the strain. Christopher's throat tightened. What can we do? We can try some medications to help support her heart function, Dr. Jennifer explained. But I need to be honest with you, there's a chance she may not grow strong enough to survive long term. She'll need constant monitoring and care. The words hit Christopher like a physical blow. He looked down at Hope, remembering how hard she'd fought since birth. Will do whatever it takes, he said firmly, whatever she needs. When Christopher returned home, Jimmy ran to meet him, his face tear stained. Is Hope okay? Christopher knelt down, still holding Hope carefully. She's sick, buddy, but we're going to take extra special care of her, okay? Dr. Jennifer gave us medicine to help her feel better. Jimmy wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. Promise she'll be okay. I promise we'll do everything we can to help her, Christopher said, pulling Jimmy into a gentle hug with his free arm. That evening, after Jimmy had finally fallen asleep, Ashley found Christopher sitting at the kitchen table. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Dad, she said softly, I want you to know how much it means to me seeing how much you care for Hope and Jamie. Her voice caught slightly. The way you've been with both of them, it's shown me so much about who you really are. Over the next few days, Christopher found himself moving slower than usual around the farm. His joints ached more than before, and the daily tasks seemed heavier. Somehow, every few hours he checked on Hope, giving her the medicine Dr. Jennifer had prescribed, but worry noted at him constantly. One morning while feeding the chickens, he dropped the feed bucket, his hands trembling with exhaustion, standing there surrounded by scattered feed. The reality of his situation hit him hard. He wasn't as young as he used to be, and running a farm while caring for a special needs puppy was taking its toll. That evening, after James had gone to bed, Christopher sat at the kitchen table with Ashley. The familiar creak of the old wooden chair seemed to mirror his own weariness. Dad, Ashley's voice was gentle. What's wrong? You've been quiet all day. Christopher stared down at his weathered hands. I'm scared, Ashley, he admitted, his voice rough with emotion. Scared I won't be able to give Hope everything she needs. The farm takes so much work, and I'm not as strong as I used to be. He looked up at his daughter, his eyes worried. I don't want to fail her or Jamie, but I don't know if I can do this alone. Ashley reached across the table and took his hand. You don't have to do it alone, she said softly. Then after a moment's pause, she added, what if Jimmy and I moved here to the farm? Christopher's head snapped up in surprise. I've been thinking about it. Ashley continued, that house in town, it's full of memories of Tucker. Sometimes it feels like we're living with ghosts. She squeezed his hand. But here on the farm, Jamie's happier than I've seen him in months, and I could help you with everything, the farm work, caring for Hope, all of it. You'd really want to do that? Christopher asked, hardly daring to hope. Ashley nodded, her eyes bright. It would be good for all of us, Dad. A fresh start. Christopher felt the weight lifting from his shoulders. The thought of having his family close, of sharing the responsibilities and joys of the farm with them, filled him with relief and happiness. Yes, he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, I'd like that very much. That night, as Christopher lay in bed, the familiar sounds of the farm drifting through his window, he felt truly hopeful. For the first time in days, he wouldn't have to face the next morning. Sunlight streamed through Christopher's bedroom window, accompanied by an unfamiliar sound, laughter floating up from the yard below. He pulled himself out of bed and peered outside. Jimmy was sitting cross-legged on the grass, surrounded by Luna's puppies, with Hope balanced carefully in her wheelchair. Nearby, Christopher made his way downstairs, the smell of fresh coffee greeting him in the kitchen. Ashley stood at the stove making pancakes. Morning, Dad, she said with a warm smile. I hope you don't mind. I found your old pancake Griddle mind, this is the best welcome I could ask for, Christopher replied, his heart full at the sight of his daughter in his kitchen. Throughout the morning, the farmhouse buzzed with activity. Ashley unpacked boxes, finding homes for their belongings. Among Christopher's well-worn furniture, she hung fresh curtains in the windows and arranged family photos on the mantel, including one of Tucker that Christopher hadn't seen before Jamie threw himself into farm life with enthusiasm. Christopher showed him how to collect eggs from the chicken coop, and the boy treated it like a treasure hunt, carefully placing each egg in his basket. Grandpa, look, Jamie called out, holding up a particularly large brown egg. This one's huge. At lunch, they gathered around the kitchen table, passing plates and sharing stories. Ashley told Jamie about her own childhood on the farm, while Christopher listened amazed at how many details she remembered. In the afternoon, Christopher helped Ashley clear out the old storage room upstairs for Jamie's bedroom as they worked side by side, moving boxes and dusting shelves. The awkwardness between them continued to fade. Remember when this was your art room? Christopher asked, finding an old sketch pad in one of the boxes. Ashley laughed. I spent hours up here drawing horses. I was convinced I'd be a famous artist someday. You were good at it too, Christopher said softly. Still are, I bet. As evening approached, they settled in the living room. The fireplace crackled warmly, casting a gentle glow across the room. Luna's puppies tumbled around on the rug, playing with an old rope toy. Hope, growing stronger each day, wobbled determinedly after her siblings in her wheelchair. Jimmy lay on his stomach, watching the puppies play, while Ashley curled up in the old armchair with a cup of tea. Christopher sat in his favorite chair, taking in the scene before him. The room felt different now, fuller, warmer, more alive. He watched as Hope managed to keep up with her brothers and sisters, her determination matching the spirit of his newly reunited family. Looking at Ashley and Jimmy, both so at home in his house, Christopher felt overwhelming gratitude. Somehow, this tiny puppy had helped bring his family back together, giving them all a second chance at being whole again. The sun had barely peeked over the horizon when Christopher made his way downstairs to check on Hope the next day. The morning dew still clung to the grass as he stepped onto the porch, surprised to find Jamie already outside in his pajamas and rubber boots. Look, Grandpa, Jimmy called out, his voice filled with excitement. Hope's getting really good at this. Christopher watched as the small puppy navigated her wheelchair across the dewy grass, following Jamie's gentle encouragement. Luna lay nearby, her watchful eyes never leaving her smallest pup. Hope's determination showed in every movement as she pushed forward, her tiny legs working in sync with the wheels. She's doing great, buddy, Christopher said, joining them in the yard. You're becoming quite the trainer. Over the next week, Hope's progress became more noticeable with each passing day. Jamie spent every spare moment with her, creating little obstacle courses with cardboard boxes and teaching her to maneuver around them. He'd pull treats from his pocket, rewarding her successful attempts with gentle praise and scratches behind her ears. Christopher noticed the change in his grandson too. The shy boy who had first arrived at the farm was transforming before his eyes. Jamie spoke more confidently, smiled more often, and threw himself into farm life with growing enthusiasm. His dedication to Hope seemed to bring out a natural leadership quality that had been hidden beneath his quiet exterior. One afternoon, Christopher watched from the barn as Jamie guided Hope through a new challenge, navigating a slight slope near the garden. The puppy hesitated at first, but Jamie's patient encouragement gave her the confidence to try. You can do it, Hope, Jamie called out, holding a treat just like we practiced. Hope pushed forward, her wheels rolling steadily down the gentle incline. When she reached Jamie, his face lit up with pride. That evening, as Ashley served dinner at the kitchen table, Jimmy could barely contain his excitement. He sat up straight in his chair, practically bouncing as they passed around the mashed potatoes. Guess what, Jimmy announced, his eyes bright. Hope followed me all the way across the yard today, and I barely had to help her at all. She's getting so strong. Christopher caught Ashley's eye across the table, and they shared a knowing smile. The pride in Jamie's voice was unmistakable, matching the confidence that now showed in his posture and the way he spoke. Hope's journey had become more than just helping a puppy learn to walk. It had helped Jamie find his own strength. The three proceed to head to bed, a smile on all of their faces for different reasons. The morning sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows as Ashley and Christopher worked side by side. Preparing breakfast, the familiar sizzle of bacon filled the air, while Ashley mixed pancake batter, falling into an easy rhythm they developed over the past weeks. It's amazing how different everything feels now, Ashley said, pouring batter onto the griddle. This kitchen used to seem so empty when I was growing up. Christopher nodded, turning the bacon. Having you and Jamie here has brought life back to this old house. He paused, then added, I've been thinking about expanding the farm, maybe adding some sheep, goats. Jimmy seems to have a natural way with animals. He does. Ashley agreed, flipping a golden brown pancake. It would be good for him to have more responsibilities, and honestly for me too. I feel more settled here than I have in years. Later that afternoon, Christopher drove them to the Thompson farm down the road to pick up some feed supplies. As they pulled up to the weathered barn, two children around Jamie's age were playing in the yard. Jamie instinctively moved closer to Ashley, his shoulders tensing. The Thompson kids waved and called out a friendly hello. Why don't you go say hi, Ashley encouraged gently. I heard they have some new baby goats in the barn. Jamie hesitated, but his curiosity about the animals won out. He slowly made his way over to where the other children stood. One of them, a girl with pigtails, pointed towards the barn with excitement. Christopher and Ashley watched as Jamie followed the children inside. Soon they could hear laughter floating out from the barn doors. I can't remember the last time I heard him laugh like that with other kids, Ashley said softly when it was time to leave. Jamie's face was flushed with excitement as he told them about the baby goats and how the Thompson kids had let him help feed them. On the drive home, Ashley turned to Christopher in the passenger seat. Dad, I want to thank you for everything. Moving here, it's given us both something we needed, a sense of belonging again. Christopher's eyes grew misty as he looked at his daughter. Having you both here has filled an emptiness I didn't even want to admit was there. He glanced in the rearview mirror at Jamie, who was dozing in the back seat. Every day feels brighter now. The next day, dark clouds loomed on the horizon. As Christopher stepped onto the wraparound porch, the air felt thick and heavy, promising a summer storm. Years of farming had taught him to read these signs well. Ashley, he called through the screen door, we'd better get everything secured. Looks like a big one coming. Ashley emerged from the house, her eyes scanning the darkening sky. I'll help you move Luna and the puppies inside. Christopher moved with practiced efficiency, checking the barn doors and windows while Ashley gathered fresh straw for the animals. Jimmy followed them, carrying Hope carefully in his arms. Will they be okay in the barn? Jimmy asked, his voice tinged with worry. The barn's the safest place for them, Christopher assured him. It's weathered many storms before. As the first raindrops fell, the family hurried back to the house. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and Jimmy settled by the living room window with Hope in his lap. The little puppy trembled slightly at each thunderclap. Don't be scared, Jimmy whispered, stroking her fur. I'll keep you safe. He held her closer, watching as lightning illuminated the sky. Christopher and Ashley worked together to light candles and gather flashlights just in case the wind picked up outside. Whistling through the trees. Who's up for a game of Monopoly? Ashley suggested, trying to keep things cheerful. She pulled the worn board game from a shelf while Christopher brought over some cookies and milk. They settled around the coffee table, the storm raging outside. Jamie kept glancing toward the window between his turns, but slowly relaxed as they played. Hope dozed in his lap, seemingly comforted by his presence. As evening approached, the storm showed no signs of letting up. Christopher checked his watch, knowing it was time to move the puppies to their usual spot in the barn for the night. The creek might rise with all this rain, Christopher said, pulling on his rain jacket. I'll keep checking on them through the night. Jim's forehead creased with concern as they carried the puppies out to the barn. Are you sure they'll be all right? Christopher squeezed his grandson's shoulder. Don't worry, Jamie. The barn's on high ground, and I've seen this farm through worse storms than this. They all go to their rooms, still a little concerned about what might happen. The sound of rushing water jolted Christopher awake in the darkness. His farmer's instincts kicked in immediately, and he rushed to the window. Through the curtain of rain, he could see water from the creek spilling onto his land, creeping toward the barn. Ashley, Jamie, he called, running down The hallway, the creak's flooding. We need to move the animals. Ashley emerged from her room. Quickly pulling on her boots, Jimmy appeared moments later, his eyes wide with worry. Hope, he cried out. They grabbed flashlights and rain gear, then hurried through the downpour toward the barn. The water was already ankle deep, making each step treacherous. Christopher pushed against the barn door, which groaned against the weight of the water inside. Luna was barking anxiously. The puppies whimpered in their pen as water seeped across the barn floor. Hope's wheelchair had gotten tangled in the wet hay and mud, leaving her struggling to move. We need to get them to higher ground, Christopher shouted over the storm. Ashley scooped up 2 puppies while Christopher grabbed Luna's leash. Jimmy splashed through the rising water toward Hope. I'm coming, he called to her. Despite his small size, he pushed against the current. Determination written across his face. The water reached his knees as he worked to free Hope's wheelchair from the mud. Jamie, be careful, Ashley called out, her voice tight with worry. Christopher waded over to help his grandson. Together, they lifted Hope free from the muck. Jimmy cradled her close to his chest while Christopher gathered the last puppy. The family fought their way through the storm to the house, where they had prepared a dry space in the mud room. Luna shook herself, spraying water everywhere, while the puppies huddled together, shivering. Jimmy sat on the floor, holding Hope in a towel and whispering softly to her, "You're okay now. You're safe." His gentle words seemed to calm not just Hope, but the other puppies as well. They gathered around him, seeking comfort in his presence. Christopher watched as Ashley helped Jamie dry the puppies, their clothes soaked, but their spirits unbroken. The storm began to lose its fury outside, its thunder growing more distant. In the warm light of the mud room, Christopher felt his heart swell with pride. His family had faced the crisis together, each one showing courage when it mattered most. The morning sun revealed the storm's aftermath across Christopher's farm. Muddy water still pulled around the barn's entrance, and broken fence posts lay scattered across the sodden fields. Christopher and Ashley walked the property, taking stock of the damage, while Jimmy sat on a dry patch of ground. Hope nestled safely in his arms. The west fence is completely down, Ashley said, pointing to where several posts had given way, and there's still standing water in the barn. Christopher nodded, his expression grim as he examined the barn's floor. "We'll need to get this water out before it damages the wood." He grabbed a push broom and began sweeping water toward the door. Jimmy watched from his spot, gently stroking Hope's fur. "Can I help, Grandpa?" "You're already helping by keeping Hope calm," Christopher assured him with a warm smile as he worked on temporary repairs to secure the fence. The rumble of trucks approached the farm. 3 pickup trucks pulled into the driveway, loaded with tools and supplies. The Henderson family from the neighboring farm stepped out, followed by the Martin and the Wilsons. They carried shovels, lumber, and determination in their steps. "Thought you could use some help," Tom Henderson called out, already rolling up his sleeves. Jamie's face lit up as he recognized some of the other farmers' children. "Hope and I helped save the puppies last night," he announced proudly, his shyness forgotten and his excitement to share their adventure. "Is that right?" Mrs. Wilson knelt beside him. "You must have been very brave." The adults quickly organized in a team, some helping Christopher with the fence, while others joined Ashley in clearing debris from the barn. The children gathered around Jimmy, listening intently as he described how he'd waded through the flood to rescue Hope. She wasn't scared at all, Janie explained, demonstrating how Hope had remained calm in his arms. "She's the bravest puppy ever." As the sun began to set, the farm looked remarkably different. The barn floor was dry, the fence stood sturdy again, and the yard had been cleared of debris. The neighbors gathered their tools, declining Christopher's offers of payment with warm smiles and friendly waves. The family settled onto the porch, watching the last rays of sunlight paint the sky in soft oranges and pinks. Jamie sat on the steps, helping Hope practice with her wheelchair on the smooth wooden boards. She seemed stronger than ever, pushing forward with determined little steps that made Jimmy beam with pride. "I can't believe how many people came to help," Ashley said softly, watching her son with Hope. "It means so much." Christopher nodded, his heart full as he observed his daughter and grandson. The farm that had once felt too empty now buzzed with life and love, and he marveled at how much had changed since Ashley and Jimmy had arrived. A week after the storm, Dr. Jennifer's truck pulled into the farmyard. On a bright morning, she carried her medical Bag ready for her checkup visit with Hope and the other puppies Christopher and Jimmy met her at the front door with. Jamie barely containing his excitement. "Dr. Jennifer, wait until you see what Hope can do." Now Jamie bounced on his toes as he led her to where Hope was playing in the yard. Dr. Jennifer's eyes widened as she watched Hope confidently moving around in her wheelchair. The tiny puppy had gained weight, her coat shinier and her movements more coordinated than before. "This is remarkable," she said, kneeling to examine Hope more closely. "She's so much stronger. Jim's been working with her every day," Christopher explained, pride evident in his voice. "He's got quite a way with her." "Can I tell you what we've been practicing?" Jimmy asked. When Dr. Jennifer nodded, he moved a few steps away from Hope. "Hope, come," he called out. Clearly, without hesitation, Hope wheeled herself toward Jamie, her tail wagging. Jamie set up a small obstacle course he'd made with wooden blocks and called Hope again. Everyone watched in amazement as Hope carefully maneuvered around each obstacle, making her way to Jamie without any help. "I can't believe this," Dr. Jennifer said, shaking her head in wonder. "When I first designed that wheelchair, I wasn't sure she'd ever adapt to it this well. Jamie, you've done an incredible job." With her training, Jamie's face glowed with pride as he gave Hope a gentle pat. "She's really smart. She tries so hard every day." That evening, Ashley prepared a special dinner to celebrate Hope's progress, the kitchen filled with the warm aroma of pot roast, and Jamie insisted on giving Hope an extra special treat he'd saved just for this occasion. As they gathered around the table, Christopher raised his glass of lemonade to Hope. He said, his voice thick with emotion, "The little puppy who never gave up and who brought this family back together." Jamie grinned and clinked his glass with his grandfather's while Ashley wiped a happy tear from her eye. Hope sat contentedly at Jamie's feet, her tail thumping steadily against the floor. Over the next few weeks, word spread through the nearby towns about Luna's puppies. Phone calls started coming in, and Christopher found himself spending evenings talking to potential adopters. He took his responsibilities seriously, carefully noting down details about each family's home situation and experience with dogs. "We need to make sure they go to the right homes," Christopher explained to Jamie one evening as they sat on the porch. "These puppies deserve families who will love them as much as we do." Each time a family came to visit, Christopher watched how they interacted with the puppies. He paid attention to small details, whether they asked thoughtful questions, if they showed genuine interest in the puppy care, and most importantly, how the puppies responded to them. When the first family arrived to take their puppy home, Jamie's eyes welled up with tears. He hugged the small brown and white puppy tightly, burying his face in its soft fur. "I don't want them to go," he whispered to Ashley, who knelt beside him. Ashley gently stroked his hair. "I know it's hard, sweetheart, but think about how much joy this puppy will bring to their little girl, just like Hope brings joy to you. They're going to make another family very, very happy." Jamie nodded slowly, understanding, but still sad. He gave the puppy one final pat before the family carefully placed it in their car. Over the following days, the remaining puppies found their new homes. One by one, each goodbye was emotional, but Jamie grew more accepting with each adoption. He helped Christopher prepare care packages for each family, including their puppy's favorite toy and detailed instructions for their care. Finally, only Luna and Hope remained as the last family drove away with their new puppy. Jamie sat on the porch steps with Hope in his lap. He watched their car disappear down the dusty road, then looked down at Hope, who was contentedly nuzzling against him. "Hope's staying with us forever, right?" Jamie asked, looking up at Christopher. "She's part of our family now." Christopher smiled warmly, watching how naturally Hope fit into Jamie's embrace. "She sure is, buddy. She was always meant to be right here with us." The summer day settled into a comfortable rhythm on the farm. Each morning, Christopher would wake early to find Jamie already up, helping with the morning chores. Luna would follow them around the property, while Hope zoomed along in her wheelchair, getting stronger every day. Christopher took pleasure in teaching Jamie about farming. He showed him how to check the soil, when to plant different crops, and how to care for the animals. Jamie soaked up every bit of knowledge, his eyes bright with curiosity. "See how the corn stalks are starting to peek through?" Christopher pointed to the neat rows in the field. "That means we're right on schedule." Ashley, meanwhile, brought order To the farmhouse, she organized the paperwork that had been piling up for years, created spreadsheets for the farm's finances, and kept everything running smoothly. Her business degree finally found its purpose in managing the farm's accounts. One warm afternoon, Christopher sat on the porch watching Hope chase butterflies in her wheelchair. Her determination reminded him of those first difficult days after she was born when they weren't sure she would survive. Now here she was racing around the yard, her wheels kicking up little clouds of dust. He thought about how much his life had changed since that night at the vet clinic. Before Hope, he'd been lonely and stuck in his ways, weighted down by regret. But this tiny dog's fighting spirit had sparked something in all of them. She had given Jamie confidence, helped heal the rift with Ashley, and showed Christopher himself that it was never too late for second chances. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table enjoying Ashley's chicken pot pie, Jamie could barely contain his excitement. At Grandpa, he said, bouncing in his seat, "I have an idea. Could we build a special play area for Hope in the yard with ramps and tunnels she can wheel through?" Ashley smiled at her son's enthusiasm. "That's actually a wonderful idea, honey. It would help her exercise more. We could use some of that leftover lumber from the barn repairs," Christopher added, already mentally sketching out the design. "Maybe add some shallow steps she can practice on." They spent the rest of dinner planning the play area, each person contributing ideas. Jamie grabbed a piece of paper and started drawing his vision, complete with colorful slides and obstacle courses. As Christopher watched his daughter and grandson excitedly discuss their PL hands, his heart felt full. The family he thought he'd lost forever was right here, gathered around his table planning a future together, and it had all started with one tiny puppy who refused to give up. Few months passed, and the autumn breeze rustled through the leaves as Christopher and Jamie stood back to admire their completed work. After months of planning and building, H's play area was finally finished. Ramps of different heights zigzagged across the space, connected by patches of soft grass that cushioned any tumbles. They'd even added a shallow pool for hot days and several tunnels that Hope loved to zoom through. "Do you think she'll like it?" Jamie asked, watching Hope explore the new equipment. Christopher smiled as Hope confidently wheeled up one of the gentler slopes. "I think she already does." Hope had grown stronger over the past few months. Her wheelchair, once awkward and challenging, now seemed like a natural extension of her body. She navigated the ramps with ease, her tail wagging with excitement as she discovered each new feature. Word spread quickly through their small town about the special play area. That afternoon, several neighbors stopped by with their dogs. Mrs. Thompson brought her elderly golden retriever, while the Miller family came with their energetic border collie. Even Dr. Jennifer visited with her own rescue dog. Jamie beamed with pride as he demonstrated how Hope used the equipment. "Watch this," he called out to everyone. Hope wheeled up the tallest ramp, paused at the top, and then carefully made her way down, drawing applause from the gathered crowd. "She couldn't even move when she was born," Jamie explained to the Miller children, "but she never gave up." His voice carried confidence that hadn't been there months ago. More visitors arrived throughout the day. The local newspaper photographer took pictures of Hope playing with the other dogs, while children from Jamie's school gathered around to pet her and ask questions about her wheelchair. Luna watched from her favorite spot under the oak tree, seemingly proud of her determined daughter. Hope played until she tired, then wheeled over to rest beside her mother. As the sun began to set, the visitors gradually departed, leaving Jamie and Christopher sitting on the porch steps. They watched Hope dozing peacefully in her wheelchair nearby. "Everyone loves Hope," Jamie said thoughtfully. "Did you see how Tommy's little sister wasn't scared of her wheelchair at all?" She said Hope was the bravest dog she'd ever met. Christopher nodded, remembering how many people had been moved by Hope's story that day. Some had tears in their eyes watching her play so joyfully despite her challenges. Others had shared their own stories of overcoming difficulties inspired by the little dog's determination. The crisp autumn air brought new energy to the farm as leaves turned golden and red. Jamie, who had once been shy and withdrawn, now bounded off the school bus each afternoon, eager to share his day's adventures with his family. And Hope, one Tuesday afternoon, Jamie surprised Ashley by asking if he could invite some friends over to see the farm. "Tommy and Sarah from my science class Really want to meet Hope, he explained, fidgeting with excitement. I told them all about her wheelchair and how she never gives up. Ashley watched with pride as Jamie gave his friends a tour that weekend. He confidently showed them how to feed the chickens and explained Hope's daily exercises. The children gathered around Hope, amazed by her ability to navigate the play area in her wheelchair. Later that week, John joined the school's nature club. Ashley noticed how he raised his hand more in class discussions, according to his teacher, and volunteered to give a presentation about farm animals. Watching Jamie flourish brought tears to Ashley's eyes one afternoon as she folded laundry on the porch. The scared little boy who'd arrived at the farm months ago had transformed into a confident, caring child. She thought about their old house in town, how quiet and empty it had felt after Tucker's passing. Here on the farm, surrounded by the warmth of family and the daily miracles of Hope's progress, they'd found healing they didn't know they needed. Christopher's patient guidance had been instrumental in this change. He taught Jamie about responsibility through caring for the animals, celebrated his small victories, and provided the grandfather's love. Jime had been missing. The farm had become more than just a home. It was where their family had rebuilt itself. That evening, Jime helped Christopher in the kitchen, standing on a stool to reach the counter as they prepared dinner together. And then in science class, Jamie chatted excitedly, carefully washing vegetables. I knew the answer about animal adaptations because of Hope. Mrs. Wilson said my example was excellent. Christopher smiled, showing Jamie how to properly cut carrots. That's wonderful, buddy. Hope would be proud. Ashley joined them in the kitchen, leaning against the door frame as she watched her father and son work together. The scene before her, Jamie's animated chat, Christopher's patient guidance, the warm glow of the kitchen lights filled her heart with gratitude. This was what family should feel like. She thought, heading off to bed. The morning sun cast long shadows across the farmland as Christopher stepped out onto the front porch. Hope waited eagerly by his feet, her wheelchair gleaming in the early light. Luna padded over to join them, and Ashley emerged from the house wrapped in a cozy sweater. Perfect morning for a walk, Christopher said, breathing in the crisp autumn air. They set off along the well-worn path that circled the property. Hope's wheels crunched over fallen leaves as she moved confidently beside Christopher. Luna stayed close to her puppy while Ashley walked at her father's side, their shoulders occasionally brushing in comfortable silence. The maples and oaks had turned brilliant shades of red and gold, their leaves drifting down in the gentle breeze. Christopher watched Hope navigate around rocks and twigs with practiced ease, remembering those first difficult days after her birth. The tiny puppy who had struggled to breathe was now full of life, her determination never wavering. Despite her challenges, his mind drifted to that phone call with Ashley months ago when he'd finally found the courage to reach out. How different things had been then. The loneliness that had filled the farmhouse, the weight of regret that had pressed down on his shoulders. He'd never imagined that Hope's arrival would lead to such profound changes in their lives. Remember when Jamie first tried to help Hope with her wheelchair? Ashley asked softly, as if reading his thoughts. He was so gentle with her. Christopher nodded, smiling at the memory. That boy has such a big heart, just like his mother. They paused near the old oak tree that marked the halfway point of their walk. In the distance, Jamie was already out in the yard setting up small obstacles for Hope to practice with. His laughter carried across the morning air as Hope successfully navigated around a series of cones. Christopher felt his chest tighten with emotion as he watched them. The sight of his grandson's confidence, so different from the shy child who had first arrived at the farm, filled him with joy. Hope had shown them all what was possible with patience, love, and determination. Luna pressed against his leg, and Christopher reached down to scratch behind her ears. You gave us quite a gift, he murmured to her. The mother dog wagged her tail, her eyes fixed on her special puppy in the distance, standing under the spreading branch of the oak. Christopher felt a deep sense of peace settle over him. The morning sun warmed his face as he watched Jamim and Hope play, their happiness a testament to the healing that had taken place on this farm and Hope's courage. They had all found strength in her need for care. They had found purpose, and in coming together to help her thrive, they had found their way back to being a family. Few months have passed, and the winter sun hung low in the clear blue Sky as Jemia and Ashley worked together in the kitchen, the sweet smell of vanilla filled the air while they decorated a small cake for Hope's first birthday celebration. Jemia carefully placed Dog's safe treats around the edge of his tongue, poking out in concentration. Do you think Hope will like it? Jemia asked, adjusting a treat that had tilted sideways. She'll love it, sweetheart, Ashley replied, ruffling his hair. Especially since you made it outside. Christopher arranged chairs in the yard, creating a cozy circle around a table decorated with blue and white streamers. Hope followed him around in her wheelchair, her tail wagging as she watched the preparations. Luna lounged nearby, keeping a watchful eye on her special puppy. Soon cars began pulling up the gravel driveway. Neighbors and friends arrived, bearing gifts wrapped in bright paper. Dr. Jennifer stepped out of her truck, carrying a large basket filled with new toys and treats for Hope. I can hardly believe this is the same tiny puppy I helped deliver, Dr. Jennifer said, kneeling to greet Hope. You've come so far, little one. Jemia proudly demonstrated Hope's newest tricks, showing how she could weave between cones and follow complex commands. The gathered crowd clapped and cheered as Hope performed each task perfectly, her wheels kicking up small clouds of dust. When it came time for James' speech, he stood nervously in front of everyone, clutching a piece of paper. Before Hope came, I was scared of a lot of things, he began, his voice growing stronger, but watching her try so hard every day, never giving up even when things were tough, it made me want to be brave too. He looked down at Hope, who sat attentively at his feet. She's my best friend, and she taught me that being different doesn't mean you can't do amazing things. Tears glistened in Ashley's eyes as she watched her son. Christopher squeezed her hand, his own eyes misty with emotion around them. Their neighbors nodded in agreement, many sharing how Hope's story had touched their own lives. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the yard, Christopher looked around at the gathering. Ashley stood close beside him, their hands still clasped together. Jamie laughed joyfully as Hope chased him around the yard, her wheelchair moving smoothly across the packed earth. The sight of them playing together, surrounded by friends and family, filled Christopher's heart with gratitude for the remarkable journey that had brought them all together. Hope zoomed past, her wheels spinning as she pursued Jamie, her determination and joy as strong as ever. The little dog who had once fought just to survive now raced through life with boundless enthusiasm, showing everyone who met her what was possible with love, courage, and an unwavering spirit. If you enjoyed the story of Hope, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.